What is happening, blockheads? We are back in the bunker, and we've got a couple things we're going to try working on today. So, starting getting some cleanup done. So, we've taken care of the Spalding box, the random pile. We've done instructions. So, I think today's order of business is going to involve getting this stuff cleaned up here. So, the reason is because this white box here has more instructions in it. Looks like we've probably got more Ziploc bags, perhaps with some more Star Wars stuff. This will also help us get the Ultra Agent set kind of all in the same place. And then the other thing I'd like to do is get this large box and put it somewhere up top. So if we get the box stuff up and out of the way, that'll give us more shelf space for displaying things. So let's start here with an up close and show what we're working with. And then I'm going to take step one here. I also want to get our instructions out of the way. So this is not going to be the permanent home for instructions, but at least that'll give me some table space to work with. So let's get the Ultra Agent stuff. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this guy because we have already talked about it a little bit, and I'd rather spend more time on it once we get means to put it together. So this is the under portion. Now, side little interesting note here. So I did put our Ultra Agent characters over here. So for those of you who are ultra attentive to detail, I had a little one of these gray pieces, and I thought it was maybe one of the projectiles. So some of you might have noticed that her backpack was missing one. So I at least noticed that that belonged to her. So in case anybody wanted to call that out, just letting you know, we got it covered. So no need to panic. So I know some things got to be tough for people watching, be like, oh my goodness, details missed. We got to get that resolved, you know, because this is unscripted, and not everything gets caught when it's being done the first time through. So one of the other things is while working on the instructions, I discovered that this guy had a little orb or something that he can throw. And I'm like, uh-oh, I hope that's not missing. Well, the good news is I think that is in here somewhere. So I found a container. I believe it's this one here. We actually have those little green orbs. So we'll probably go into that later. But this is probably the extra pieces from Ultra Agent. So what we'll do, we'll actually put that with these guys so we know that that's related as well. So here's our drone that we had. That also is going to go with the Ultra Agents. And we have the science gal, who I called Scooby-Doo earlier. I didn't see up close. It looks like, yeah, definitely more of a science engineer or technician. And we're going to start moving our spare parts, spare pieces together. We've got a whole other mess of dusty stuff, and I'm not even going to touch that yet. I know we got some Star Wars Episode 1 stuff from the looks of it. And then, of course, we have the drone. So the next thing, in order to get the drone somewhere useful, I want to keep it on the Star Wars shelf here. We got some room up here. So we got this other case full of pieces now. This looks like it was more than spare parts. This was probably pieces used for design for stands. I got a lot of white pieces in here, a lot of clear pieces. So I probably use this as my staging area for parts for using backdrops. So we already have a spot over here for other, you know, storage type containers. So we'll get those together. Now we got an open spot up top. But actually, one other thing we got to do Star Wars related. So we got this huge base plate here we've kind of looked at a little bit. And this is going to be a little tough. So I'm going to be doing this with one hand. We might drop something here, but we want to get this up top if possible. I'm going to try to use my other hand to stabilize it a bit. Hitting the shelf. And there we go. So that's got some of our snow troopers on it. We kind of talked about this guy that came with the snow speeder. So we'll spend more time on him in the future. But now we've got all of the stuff out of the way for the storage containers to get to them. Now we need to get to this box. And maybe we'll look at this box if we got the time today. We'll bring this out to the table at least. Definitely a lot of Star Wars stuff going on in here. At least most of that's partially assembled. So that will give us a little more to work with. Now let's take our drone. Let's get our drone on top of the Hoth random backdrop. Crushed a snow trooper. That's okay. He'll live. Now we have access to our other piece of the Ultra Agent truck. So again, here's our small Imperial Walker. We'll put it next to the other Imperial Walker and the old school space wannabe Imperial Walker. So I did mention there's kind of like an Imperial Walker thing going on here. So we found our TIE fighter, or the micro fighter, and since we got some Star Wars stuff here, let's get him up there. Granted, that's not the best place for him, but it's grouped. So we have this other piece that fell off something else. We kind of got our spare part pile going right there. And now we can finally get to the Ultra Agent vehicle. And this thing could have easily just rolled off the shelf here. So here's the trailer. And the reason that could have fallen was because it's got this jack, and it actually slides forward real easily. It's actually a pretty cool mechanism, the way they allow the semi-cab to back right up to it. But we'll, again, have to spend more time on that later. So now we have cleaned this section out. We now, in this Hershey's box, have a bazillion instructions. So we might do a little preview of that, but now we can bring this out to the table so we'll have a better sense of all the sets that are hanging out here in the bunker. So that is now on the table. And now we can get to this big box, which I have not talked about yet. And actually, before we do that, let me make some space because I'm probably going to need table for support here. So let's get this out. We'll do a quick shot at this. So this is the front. This is not the back. So here we have, what is this? 75098 Assault on Hoth. I believe this was probably the very last Star Wars set I purchased, and we're talking better part of 10 years ago. So it's very difficult for me to think what I would do if I were to open this. I don't even know if all this stuff necessarily fits to the kind of scale that we would want for a Hoth display. But I'll just put out as a possibility, not going to make a promise, but maybe if this whole thing gets cleaned up over the course of this journey, maybe this would be a final thing to do at the end to actually break this open and maybe assemble that. But the challenge is, of course, because Lego holds its value, it's kind of tough to want to break the seal knowing that this stuff ages pretty well. So the whole idea of getting to this was getting it out of the way so we can now put it up top. There it is. So we now have it out of the way, and we'll work on moving some of this other stuff into the same area later. So we now have this giant open space to start, giving us a little more flexibility. And of course, we'll have some Star Wars pieces to cover too. So we're still doing pretty good on time here. So I think next time we'll probably work on the Ultra Agents. Try and get that caught up a little bit. But in the meantime, let's take a look at what's in this box. Probably some more cool Star Wars stuff to look at here. So we went through instructions and saw a lot of Star Wars stuff last time. So this looks like probably the original ATST, so partially assembled. Probably had to take the legs off to get in a Ziploc bag. This looks like, I don't know if it's the Battle for Naboo or if maybe it's from the Gungan ship, but there's clearly a couple of Gungans or Jar Jar Binks in there. And we have, I don't know if this was I don't know if this was the other final duel set with maybe Darth Maul and Qui-Gon, perhaps. So we'll have to look at that, try out and get a hint from the instructions. So this might be all instructions at this point. So all these instructions are probably all the other Star Wars sets that were not recent. So we're talking probably even older. So somewhere in this whole mess, somewhere in here, probably like that box there, maybe the box down there, we've got the Gungan Patrol. Then we've got the B-Wing at Rebel Control Center. So this is definitely older stuff because this was one of the early Star Wars Lego logos. And I know this is original stuff because you've got the whole Lego system thing there where they had the brick for the T. Again, old logo. This is the TIE Fighter and Y-Wing. So I believe this was like 99, maybe 2000. Again, one of the first sets purchased, and these things were ultra blocky. And we do know where that TIE Fighter is. It's there on the shelf there. And it had Vader, of course, so it's got some minifig value to it. Now, I kept these assembled early on, and I tried even hanging them from the ceiling with fishing line. Not recommended. You better have some pretty strong stuff to support the weight of Legos. And this is the original X-Wing. Got the utility cart. I don't know the proper name, of course. My Star Wars lore knowledge is not that great. So here's the original Sith Infiltrator. I mean, pretty much the only thing of value here is Darth Maul, because this is a pretty blocky item, and I don't think this has much aesthetic appeal personally, you know, so really it's got more history or just the fact it's the first one. So here's the pod race setup. So Mos Espa pod race. Now the only thing I really have any concern for here is maybe the figures. Personally, I used to really like Sebulba, but for the most part, anything episode 1, not all that concerned. So here we have the Gungan sub. Again, probably only, you know, personal interest here is probably the figures. The design actually was probably a little better on this one compared to maybe some of the others. Got a manta ray in there. That's kind of cool. Some water backdrops. Oh, here we go. Deviating from Star Wars here for a second. So again, I'm still saving the special story on this one for later, but here's the, I looked up the name last night on Brickset. So this is the Alien Moonwalker or Moonstalker. So I'll have to clarify on that because obviously I'm not getting it just right, but that was hiding in the Star Wars stuff. So I did mention that was an eBay purchase, and go figure, the other eBay purchase was right next to that one. So here's the, man, they didn't put the names on the instructions. So the other aquatic one, I'm going to have to look the name up on these guys. And sure enough, they've got the water shrubs independent there. So that was something that was kind of in question. Now, I don't see the individual crystals there, so I'll have to figure out where those crystals are at. They might be in the container, which is hidden somewhere on this thing. Actually, we tried to pop that out of there, so that's around. And there's the scuba guy. And we also have, what is this, an insert? I bet you they had a misprint here or something. So this was for the MTT carrier. Or, am I saying the right trade? Oh, it is MTT. So here's the Trade Federation MTT. Now, this is probably one of the few originals that I really like. So if anything, I did like some of the content in episode 1 from the battle scene. And this had a ton of battle droids in there. I don't know if we got any extra figures. No, it's just showing that it opens and it's got the troop carrier. I don't know if the modern ones were as cool. I mean, I did not purchase any modern ones if they had any. So this may be a one-time thing. I don't know if I have any others of these. So now we're getting into catalog stuff. Not instructions here. And then, of course, the inserts. Not too concerned about those. And then here, oh, this is what it was. So what I was referring to the Mindstorm thing, the Dark Side developer kit. And again, this was, to my knowledge, the original Imperial Walker. And this thing was pricey because all the motorization stuff. And I think it was a couple $100 at the time. And I probably felt compelled to get it just because there hadn't been any other walkers yet. But if I compare that to the other stuff, it is not as cool. So we'll find out if this is still in there. Now, this being, you know, a Mindstorm thing or a Technic kind of a build is designed to be a lot more flexible. So it was not limited to just the Imperial Walker, but it is here. Here's some survey for that. Some other Mindstorms thing, 2000. So this did have multiple pieces for the developer kit instructions. So this was for, oh, so they did probably one book for each of the primary builds. This was something that looked a little bit more, I don't know, this is like a hybrid R2-D2/Droideka. Not quite sure what they were going for with that one. Oh, no, speaking of Droideka, there is actually a Droideka. That almost would be more fun to build. I almost wonder if that would be more interesting. I never did build that. All right. So we're going to get into something a little crazy here. I'm kind of getting a preview here before looking at it, before showing it to you. This was a fantastic set, and this is probably still assembled. This might have been one of my favorites of the space era, and this was back when they had a series called M-Tron. So this is really where they got into the magnets, because you could actually pick up all the objects. You could pick up a little vehicle, little supply containers. This front thing had a seating arrangement for 3 different dudes. It's got the little pods on there. So I believe that one is probably in one of these containers somewhere. We'll eventually find that one. So behind it, and here's another one with a massive story behind it, which we'll save for when we get to it. But there's a lot of both sentimental value to this one and life lesson, because this was one of the first pirate sets. It's one of the first 4. I do remember that there's only 4 initially, and my parents used this one to teach me an economic lesson because it was purchased and I wasn't exactly able to open it right away, and I'll tell you about that more later. But this is the original Black Seas Barracuda. I do believe that there was other iterations they made over time, but this was the original, and it has got some wear and tear on some of the components, and we'll talk about that more when we get to it. And since we're running a little long on time here, I'll just do a little sampling of some of these things here, and some of this is going to look familiar because we actually kind of pulled this out of the Spalding box. So I think I got to be corrected on this one. If it's not the Screaming Eagle, it might have been the Screaming Patriot. So we did talk about that one. So I did look up the name. This was definitely early 80s, the Road Repair Crew or Kit. So we got the Fire Chief. Here was the, I don't know, I got to find the name on this one, but the Waste Management Vehicle that we were talking about. And then we got one of the Ice Planet ones. The one I'm referring to until I remember the correct name, I think, was the Road Rebel. And then this, we did this one, the Hook and Haul Wrecker. This is the one with the opening hood and the springs for the shocks. And then this guy who, again, I don't know the name of it. And I'll just leave it with this one here. So this is our other aquatic one. Again, no name on it, but this one at least came with a shark and the water shrub and everything too. So there are more here, and there's more in the box, and it looks like most of these are all from the sets that we have assembled. So I probably had these organized by stuff that was intact. Now, we have this whole other box with the Hershey's box here, and this has likely the stuff that is not assembled. So probably a poster here, and I've got these even grouped, so I didn't even know I had that one, or at least forgot I had it. So we've got all kinds of town stuff, got space stuff. This is probably more modern city and things, probably all kinds of stuff. Hey, look, there's a smaller M-Tron one. There's our Naboo Swamp. This is probably the one we saw in the Ziploc bag, and yep, there's 2 of those. And of course, we got some other stuff. So it was Lightsaber Duel for the name of this one. So we got a lot of stuff to process going through the next round of content, but this has been pretty fun, so I hope you guys enjoy. We are totally digging up some nostalgia and just trying to get everything organized. So have fun. We'll see you soon.